Hello to all our viewers. Welcome back to Pink My Glial Confessions. I'm so excited to have a guest here today that I'm going to tell you a little bit more about in a second. But I just want to give a shout out to everyone that's been following us, getting the reminders. Really appreciate that. As you know, I'm Stephanie Garces Donate, the founding attorney, also of Garces Law. We are a law firm in Arlington Heights where we help parents secure their legacies and really prepare for the unexpected. That is our mission. So today I have a special guest, Vincent Cassio, dear friend of mine, but also highly professional in his field and a true wonderful colleague of mine. He is with the wellness program at Elgin Community College, where he helps college students really navigate the college life, among other things. Not only just professionally, but from the challenges that they face to the unexpected events that they have to endure. As a college student, we all have been there where we're sort of changing our life in a weird way, but obviously in a positive direction. So that's what Vincent takes care of. And Vincent, I basically always want to call you Vinny, but I'm going to call you Vincent for this live. But I want to thank you so much for taking the time today to speak with us. So before I get to you in just a second, I want to kind of brief everybody about what we're talking about. Our topic today is very interesting. We're going to talk about questions surrounding college selection, the planning process, which are basically at the top of mind of many parents. I actually have a lot of clients that are parents that are wondering, where's my kid going to go to college? Even before COVID, the stress and the pressure of succeeding and going to a top school. And this is the same thing that they're facing today. So that's going to be the basis of our conversation today. And Vincent, like I said, I'm really excited to have you. So please feel free to give us a background about you. Go ahead.
Of course. Well, again, first and foremost, thank you for having me. And thank you so much for using your platform to talk about mental health, because it's so important. It is so important,
Yes.
especially during these times. COVID-19 has impacted everyone. College students are not the only community that has impacted. So I'm so honored to be here and have this opportunity to talk about it. Just a little bit about me. I've been in the field for over, oh my gosh, close to 10 years, I think. Yeah. And I've worked in a variety of settings, from residential to private practice to now in higher education. So I have a very well-rounded career working with all individuals of all ages, really. And yeah, no, I'm excited to be here, and we can talk a little bit about the college process and what our college students are going through. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for really representing Elgin Community College. I want to give a shout out to Elgin Community College because they are a wonderful college. I'm actually on the paralegal board there, and it is so awesome. And they're doing great things. I mean, they are constantly promoting different people, backgrounds, diversity, also highlighting the services that they offer, like that you offer, Vincent. So I just want to make sure people know, shout out to Elgin College for doing great things in the community. So thank you, Vinny, for joining us. I'm actually very flattered about what you said. And you know what? I've never had anyone thank me for using my platform. So thank you for being part of the journey. So we're going to dive in so that people can get to the nitty gritty of this. So, Vin, you remember this, how it was so nerve wracking at some point to pick a college, get good grades, like literally do everything that you can in your power to get to where you wanted to go professionally. But, hindsight's 2020, because I think about when I was applying to college, I thought I knew what I wanted to do. I thought that my background was going to be a reporter. I actually wanted to be a reporter. I was thinking, I'm going to be on TV. I'm going to do this. And I actually went another direction, as you know, i.e. Garces Law, as that was invented along the way. But it's interesting because nerve-wracking is only part of it, right? There's a bigger picture. So applying to colleges, selecting the schools. So those are the three areas we're going to talk about today for some of you that are listening. Some of the questions we want to address, I'm just going to give a point here so that people understand where we're heading. What is college selection process like? Not every potential college student knows how to do that. I'm going to say briefly that there's a lot of people watching or parents that maybe didn't go to college. Nothing wrong with that, but definitely something you can educate yourself on today here. A lot has changed since, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The lesser known emotional and physiological changes of students that they're facing today, I think, are a lot different than what we were facing in our time. So that's another thing, especially with social media, which we'll talk about. And also, we want to be a resource to parents about how to select a school for their kids or try to navigate that. So really quick, just to recap for some of you that are just joining me now, as I mentioned earlier, I'm attorney Stephanie Garces Donay, owner of Garces Law Firm, where we help parents secure their legacies. We are a law firm in Arlington Heights. My website's at the bottom of this page, as you can see. And I really, really want everyone to know that we are using our platform and what we can to make sure that you guys are educated on things. Today, we're talking about college admission. It's going to be wonderful. College students, they're a big topic. So college selection time, what to expect, what are the challenges in today's settings? So if you missed last episode for last week, you might have missed it, but it was really good. For those of you that may or may not be going through a marital issue and contemplating divorce, we talked about what to expect from changing your trusts and perhaps even updating it when you're going through a divorce. So if you want to recap on that, you have to check out my YouTube channel. I'm not going to do it all over again. No, I'm kidding. So make sure to check it out. You guys will like it. There's a lot of information in there. Patrick Slaughter was a great attorney that we have that helped us with that. So I know a lot of you have burning questions, so they're coming in as we're talking. So one of the first questions that someone is asking is, are there benefits to having my child go to a community college before attending a larger, more expensive college? What do you think?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And even thinking back to my own personal experience when I was going through, high school and deciding if I wanted to go to a community college or go straight to a four-year institution, these are some things that I wish I would have thought about in that moment or in that time. And as a young person, you're not equipped with all those ideas right away, or maybe even that guidance. So one of the things with community colleges is that one of the main components that a lot of students look into community college is the affordability, right? So students can typically expect to pay about half as much to attend a community college compared to a four-year institution.
Yep.
So, so if you take a look at tuition rates, being able to save money, staying at home and not have to pay for room and board.
Yep.
And then also just being able to work more, if you have a job in high school, you want to continue that job, you can stay in that job. You don't have to look for another job while on campus at another institution. So there's a lot of affordability and a lot of flexibility that comes with going to community college first versus going straight to a four-year institution.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm gonna, I know I'm gonna flip it on its head, because I actually took the route of going straight to a four-year university. And hindsight's 2020, because it's very much a financial decision for many families. I mean, in today's world, especially with COVID, I feel like a lot of people don't, they're not even sure what their kid's gonna do. Do they go back to the four-year university? Do they go to college near the home? And a lot of these community colleges are great places to start, not only economically, but also they have really good staff. They have really good opportunities. I had plenty of friends that joined me my junior year of college, and they said, oh, I was at, the community college near where I grew up, and then they transferred into the school. And I'm pretty sure they didn't graduate with much debt, as opposed to some of my other counterparts that had debt up to here, and it's why it's more a status. Perhaps it's the name. I mean, great. I don't regret going to a free university. I think it was amazing. But perhaps if you are looking for, does it benefit my child? Absolutely it does. And I actually don't think it hurts them. I think it benefits you in the long run. So it's a different experience. I mean, I'll say that much, right?
Definitely. Yeah. And it's so funny when you say like the status component, right?
Yeah.
Oftentimes back then, and that's gonna age me, but yeah, back then
it was a status.
It was a status issue. People would be like, oh, well, you went to community college first. But now employers are not looking into that. They want to know that you have the competency and the skills and the requirements to complete that job. So they're looking at your education and they're like, perfect. You went to community college, you went straight to a four-year, whatever. This fits the requirements. Let's get to work. And so that whole status thing is no longer an issue. It really wasn't to begin with,
I agree with that. I mean, I think if you think about the way things were back then, and I say back then, I mean, I'm dating myself too, but like a lot has changed. And I think it's because people, like, especially in a pandemic, I mean, people are losing their jobs. People are reconsidering, does it make sense to send both of my kids that are around the same age to two four-year universities where it costs me an arm and a leg? I mean, these are the decisions that parents are facing today. And I 100% agree with you, Vincent. It's one of those things where things have changed, and actually for the better. I mean, I think as the things go back to normal, maybe one day with the pandemic, I think people will consider universities a little bit more of a say lucrative, but it's an option. It's lucrative for the school, expensive for the parents. Maybe they'll go the community college route. And there's a lot of things that are offered at the community college too. I actually took a lot of summer classes there.
Yeah.
They were cheaper. They were hard. They weren't easy. But again, definitely have benefits to that.
Yeah. I would also say, sorry, I would just also say,
no, you're good. Go ahead.
Keep in mind, for families and students that are, on that process of going into college or making that decision, have those conversations with your child and talking about what kind of career they want to go into. Because sometimes, depending on the career, you may not even need a 4-year degree. If it's like vocational, if it's more hands-on, careers, labor-intensive careers, those don't need 4-year degrees. You can easily get a certificate or a 2-year degree, whatever that may be. So it's really important to have that conversation and to do your research. Another thing that I talk to students about too when they come see me is grades. So maybe they weren't the best student in high school, or they just didn't pay much attention. Like they're clearly smart, but they just didn't give much attention to their studies, which happens. Right. So community college is a great opportunity to boost up your grades and really benefit from those transfer agreements from community college, because we have a lot of wonderful agreements with local institutions, universities that can make it a lot easier for students to go into those schools than previously before.
Now, kind of just going off for my curiosity, can you explain for the audience what you mean by the transfer agreement? What is that? What does that mean in like layman terms?
Of course. So basically what that means is 4-year institutions may have agreements or contracts with community colleges. So they'll take in a certain amount of credits. So that way it'll transfer over. So again, you can benefit from the affordability of the classes, your kind of core general education courses. You can get those completed at a community college, transfer over them to the 4-year institution, and go ahead and finish the last remaining 1 or 2 years of your degree. And so it's a lot easier and it's a lot more affordable for families to get access to that education.
That's wonderful. I mean, I didn't know that, and I always learn something new from my guests, but that's something that I will definitely pass along. I mean, if you heard that, that's big news. I mean, I think people think, oh, if I go to a college, what if the credits don't transfer? I remember hearing that from friends, but I would imagine that is like a school of thought of like, just another thing to be concerned about. So that is so excellent. Thank you for sharing that with our viewers. I got another question that came in. This one's a little bit more on the opposite side of benefits. It's actually, we were talking about earlier with mental health. And so I love this topic because I think it needs to be discussed a little bit more. And who better than Vinny Cassio to talk about this? This guy is my personal therapist. So for anyone that's wondering, here's the question that came in. What are the warning signs about my child that I should look out for if they're having any mental health issues that I don't know about? That's a great question.
That is a really good question. And again, we don't often have that opportunity to talk about these things. No. And, this is where I would love to kind of use my moment here and encourage all parents who are watching this to take the opportunity and talk to their kids about self-care and about mental health, so that way we can eliminate the stigma, the negative stigma that is associated with mental health. In regards to what to look for, so obviously this pandemic has impacted everyone in so many different ways.
Yep.
In particular, students, whether you have a middle schooler, a high schooler, or a college student, they're all certainly feeling the isolation, the depression, the anxiety, the uncertainty of what the future is going to be like. And that in itself will promote high anxiety. So one of the things that you can easily see in your kids, if they're experiencing something like this, you'll see some behavioral changes. And what that can look like is feelings of sadness, anger, irritability. You'll see they may have like a loss of interest in things. Their energy levels are inconsistent. They're tired one day and super energetic the next. Maybe their appetite changes, so you'll see a fluctuation in weight gain and weight loss. Most evidently, with middle schoolers, high schoolers, you'll see a significant, impact of their academic performance. So maybe they're getting bad grades, or they're not turning in homework, so their teachers are reaching out to you. Now with college, it's a little different. So parents are not going to be able to know right away how their student is doing academically because of the good old law called FERPA. FERPA
Yep.
protects the students' privacy. So you're not going to immediately have access to that unless you get a letter note in the mail that says your student's on academic probation or academic warning. So it's really important that you have that open communication with your student, so that way you can do, check-ins. Like, hey, how you doing? How's school really going for you? Are you feeling okay? Do you feel overwhelmed? So those are some things that you can certainly look out for.
Yeah, absolutely. That is so important. Thank you for using your moment, as you said, to really explain that, because I think, a lot of times I think it's hard for anyone to really, even as a person, to really dive into someone's personal life, even if it is your kid, and say, hey, how are you really doing? I mean, sometimes people are closed off, and so that's difficult. But yes, please talk to your kids, talk to the students. College students, obviously, I think are another category, which is interesting because you're right. That's a different phase. It's a different time. And I think it's not the same as like when they're younger, because you have a little bit less control over them. But nonetheless, the conversation needs to take place. And I'm really, really happy, by the way, Vinny, that you talked about the whole stigma behind mental health. There is a big stigma with mental health. I think the biggest thing is that some of it's cultural, some of it's historical, some of it's like before our time, as you want to call it that, right? Now there's been a movement of talking about a ton of issues, diversity, the Black Lives Matter movement. Aside from mental health, all of these things are topics that people are talking about all the time. And I'm just glad that you talked about the stigma. So don't be afraid to step outside your comfort zone. That's my message. I am not the therapist here, but I would say that you should, because if you don't step out your comfort zone, you may always wonder, could I have done more, if someone does fall into a bad mental health space. So great question for whoever asked that. So the other thing that came up, and I think this is also very interesting to discuss, is what other programs or wellness programs are offered for college students in the mental health space?
Yeah, so for the most part, every institution, whether it's a four-year institution or a community college, they offer mental health resources to all students. So whether it can be very, temporary based, where it's like a couple of sessions a semester, or it could be long-term, or what they can do is refer students to long-term services in the community. So, if it's a community college, for example, again, those services are on campus, or they refer to community agencies that can accommodate those needs.
Okay.
But if it's a four-year institution, again, those vary. It'll be on campus, or they refer, again, within the community. So similar to what a community college would be. But those are great. I mean, that's a great question. And I always encourage parents, when you're taking your kid to visit the university, or you're taking them to orientation, that should be the first question that you ask.
Wow.
Mental health resources are easily available and accessible to all students, regardless of, need or disability or whatnot, because we have to understand that the growing what I would like to call a pandemic in regards to mental health for young adults continues. So anxiety and depression has increased significantly with the pandemic, but even prior to the pandemic, anxiety and depression have consistently gone up every year for young adults.
Wow.
So it's certainly a need that needs to be,
Well, it kind of sounds like it's a crisis. I mean,
Yeah.
that maybe is a good way to explain it, because something that's going up. I mean, I think too, in general, I mean, depending on what the audience is thinking when they're hearing this, they may think, oh, it's not a big deal. I mean, there are reasons that this stuff exists. And so one of the questions that came in, but I think you answered it, is someone has asked, is there professionals like Vinny at the college level? And I think the answer obviously is yes.
Yeah.
So that's an interesting question. I love what you said earlier about, as parents, we should be asking first question. And what's interesting, again, it brings me back to when I was in college. I don't think once I ever even considered if the university had a mental health wellness program, or whatever you want to call it. Now, I do remember there was a wellness place where you could like go and like sit in a room with like relaxing music or something. So I remember that. But as far as speaking to a professional, yes, it's available. So make sure the viewers, you take advantage of that when you are visiting. I mean, I would think now too, Vinny, I don't know if this is the case, but are you seeing an increase in your work where you're having more students come to you than before? And are there more people like you that have to be hired because of the need or the crisis?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. Honestly, it fluctuates. So there's definitely that need. There's definitely students who are interested and willing to go
Sure.
there. But it's also important that clinicians, if they work within the institution, that they work collaboratively with faculty members and
Okay.
with staff. Because if you think about it, our first like kind of guard, if you will, is our faculty, because they're immediately consistently meeting with students,
Right.
whether teaching
Right.
in class or doing office hours. So they're the ones that are going to frequently refer students to our services.
Right.
So that's why it's important. I know for my department, we have a really wonderful relationship with all of our faculty. So that way they know that we're here to not only support them, but to support our students. So yeah, we're available, and we're definitely seeing an increase in student usage. We've had to hire more clinicians, which understandable. The current circumstances have certainly impacted our students significantly.
Right. Well, if the need is there and it's able to be met, I mean, I think that's great. And I think that's what I want the viewers to know, that, you should be asking the right questions, but you should also keep in mind that like mental health is an ongoing thing. And correct me if I'm wrong, Vinny, but I know as time progresses between someone who's a middle schooler or a high schooler, I mean, these are the unexpected challenges that we're covering today. I mean, there's so many challenges along the way. Like if you think about on a personal level, all of the issues and the challenges you faced personally from when you were, a middle schooler to now, I mean, it's like all over the board. So this is an ever-growing topic, and quite frankly, I love hearing what you have to say about that, because I think we should be talking about it more. Yes.
Yeah.
Another question came in regards to, this is an interesting one, students again. So do you think that students involved in a sport, a fraternity, or sorority are less likely to experience emotional and psychological stressors?
Oh, that's a very good question.
Yeah, good question.
Students, and bless them, we don't want to generalize all students, but in regards to our students who are our student athletes, they're actually more likely to experience mental health issues than others, just because of the pressures to perform, the pressure to do well, not only in a physical, sport that they're passionate about, but also academically, trying to figure out what goes beyond the sport if they don't plan, to pursue professionally that sport after college. What am I going to do professionally for myself, career-wise?
Right.
And obviously, this pandemic put a huge, stop on all athletics for quite a while. So a lot of students missed out on seasons, or they're starting their season late. So now they're trying to figure out how this works within their own personal schedule, and then also just kind of who they are as an individual, because sometimes students kind of weigh heavily on that sport identity. And so it's so important that parents have that conversation with their student and let them know, like, hey, listen, we're here to support you. Whatever it is that you need, we're going to get you that help, because oftentimes student athletes are resistant to seek out mental health. They're prideful, or they're like, no, I can do this. I can just tough it out. Kind of like, if you're in the last inning of the game, you're trying to tough it out.
I was just thinking that. Yeah.
Metaphors, and it's important that for student athletes to understand that no, you don't have to always tough it out. It's okay to talk about it. It's okay to reach out for help.
Yeah.
It's a team sport.
And I love that, because, and it's funny that the question was about fraternities and sororities. I mean, it's no different. I mean, you have pressure from your peers, you have pressure from your parents, you have pressure from the school, the coach, like everywhere across the board, the pressures exist. So I love that we're talking about that, because I know student athletes, I mean, I have a ton of friends that went to a Division I school where they have sports is the bread and butter of the school. I quite have to be honest about it, but that is what it is. And I remember how much time it takes to train, to have to perform, the way that they want you to perform, but just the amount of time outside of school and social events that you have to dedicate. And according to the to the school, you have to go based on what they're telling you. So you have to stick with that schedule. So, I could totally see that being stressful. And actually, the balancing, it's a balancing act.
Yeah.
Can you really be a student and excel at school? It's hard. I mean, there's a lot of stress. So great question about that. So as a parent, in general, when parents are thinking about this, what can they do to make the selection process easier for their kid when it comes to, picking out the school? I mean, we talked about checking the wellness programs, mental health programs that they offer, but what else, as a general matter, that you give advice to your other, students, can parents be doing to make it easier on how the process already is for that?
Yeah, 100%. First and foremost, I always encourage parents to just listen. First and foremost, listen, be compassionate, offer some grace to the child, because again, this is a hard decision, and
Yeah,
understand that our young adults, as much as we'd like to protect them, they are very much aware of the insecurities and the anxieties that our families are experiencing, right? Whether that's financial pressures, emotional pressures in the home. There's so much stuff that's going on. And as much as we'd like to think, oh, they're not paying attention, they are, and they
yeah,
know what's going on. So be mindful of that and be compassionate about it. And that's why I always say, create that open communication with your child so that way you can talk about those things. But in regards to school, certainly don't pressure them to pick a particular school. I know some parents have their alma mater, or whatever, like, no, you have to go to this Ivy League, and the student's like, I don't want to go there.
yeah.
And
I know. This
you
is
know,
true.
let's not pressure them. Let's let them, be independent and grow and make those decisions for themselves with your support. It's important that we don't compare our students with other students. So sometimes parents may say, like, well, so and so went to this. Why can't you do that? And that's not their path. That's not their life goal. You want to give them that consideration and that grace to let them decide and carve out their own path. Obviously financial aid is a huge component to funding college, because not everyone is made millionaires.
Yeah.
So, being able to afford college and having that conversation with your daughter, son, or child, and letting them know, like, hey, this is the realities. If you want to go here, great. Let's look into scholarships. Let's look into grants that we can apply for, because maybe we don't have the funds to make that happen right away. And of course, evaluating the academic opportunities. So is this school really good for what you want to pursue? Like, if the school doesn't have a strong psychology program, for example, when I was going to school, I was thinking about that. Hey, do they have a great psychology program that will help me get into grad school?
Mm-hmm.
There's some forethoughts we want to be mindful of when choosing the right school.
Yeah.
And then, of course, visiting the campus, like making sure that you actually visit the school before you make a decision. Oftentimes, I've encountered students, they come to, the community college after a year at the, 4-year institution, and they tell me, they're like, I didn't visit the school. I just, chose it because of the status, and I hated the whole experience. And so that's really important, how you feel, how the student feels in that environment. You got to give yourself an opportunity to check that out.
I love that. One of my most fond memories that I had looking for colleges is actually visiting the colleges. Some of the colleges too, by the way, in case parents don't know this, it's far and few in between. I'm thinking of one in particular, but there are some schools that even offer like a follow a student for a day, or whatever you want to call it, where you actually have a student show you the campus and show you, hey, this is what it's like. This is what the classes are like. This is important. I mean, I know one of the biggest things when I was picking schools, and actually my friends were picking schools, some of my friends said, I don't want to be in a classroom with 300 students.
Right.
That's stressful to me. I want to be in a classroom where there's 20 of us and it's more, smaller. And so those are things to consider. So yes, absolutely. And as parents, please go visit the college with your kid. I mean, I can't stress this enough. I mean, sometimes I think parents underestimate that. It's like, oh, like your Aunt Sue will take you. Sure, Aunt Sue can take you, but it's not the same. And I had one of the best memories, visiting colleges with my mom and dad. And it was fun because, they see something that I didn't, or I saw something that they didn't. And that's kind of how you decide. So I think that's a great way, being present, but also asking the right questions. So I love
Mhm.
that.
Mhm.
Out of curiosity, I know we talked about the wellness programs and the mental health. Is that generally included in a tuition? Like it's not out of pocket to the students, is that right?
For the most part, so I can't speak on every institution.
Oh, sure.
No, for the institutions that I work for, it is included in tuition, so it is completely free and easily accessible to students. I will say the stuff that we offer is more short term, so it's not going to be a long term opportunity. But if we understand that the student needs those long term services, we make sure that that student gets those services before we just kind of let them go. You know what I mean? Like
Okay. All right. Yeah.
we make sure we connect them with the right appropriate services and clinician, so that way they get their needs met. And because of the state of the world right now,
Yeah.
there's unfortunately there's a little bit of a wait list for some private, private practices or organizations. So institutions are mindful of that, so that's why we're very, even though we say like there's a set limit, we're mindful to not just leave our student behind if they need that additional help. So until we find a resource for them, we'll continue to work with them. But some institutions, again, it is included in tuition. Others will, oftentimes in four-year institutions, they'll require a type of student insurance
Okay.
to tap into. So it varies. And then that's why it's really important to ask those questions at orientation.
Absolutely.
Hey, what does it look like? Does my student get this for free, or do we have to, pay for that? What is that going to look like?
Well, right. And I think that's a great question. I mean, I actually, before I even asked that, I thought that it was included, but you know what? You're right. And actually things change, right? Like if the
Mhm.
need is high and maybe the institution decides, you know what, this can be a thing that we can outsource as opposed to,
Mhm.
covering the costs or whatever. So that's a great point. One of the things I know we haven't talked about, like I was trying to circle back, is we talked about what it was like when we were growing up and we are still growing up, right?
Yeah.
But how are the challenges that students are facing, especially unexpected challenges,
Mhm.
different in today's world? I mean, I know that's a loaded question, but I just
Mhm.
want your professional opinion, because I know that for a fact there are so many things that have been amplified, the things that are, with social media, or even, gosh, it's like social, like what we're on right now, like social media, Facebook. Like, what are the pressures that people are facing that are kind of newer, that you're seeing that maybe weren't a thing in the past?
Yeah, no. I think growing up, we grew up, like you and I at least, we
Yeah.
grew up on the onset of social media. So
Yes.
MySpace, oh my God, I'm dating myself. MySpace,
Zenga, Zenga.
Zynga,
I had a
those
Zenga.
live journals,
Yes.
those were just like an introduction. And we kind of went along with the wave of social media, right? Well, our young adults now, they're thrust into social media
Yep.
where it's 24/7. So unfortunately, a lot of our students or young adults are experiencing bullying on a nonstop basis.
Right.
Whereas we would experience bullying, but then at the end of the day, we can go home and be okay.
Right.
But now it's that bullying is amplified because it continues. It's 24/7. It's, Snapchat, Instagram, Facebook, um, Twitter, TikToks, like
TikTok.
everything, everything is just at you, and you get, unfortunately, again, the bullying, but then also the access of information. So being
Sure.
exposed to everything that's going on politically and within the world, obviously we talked a little bit about Black Lives Matter and,
Hmm.
the unfortunate violence that's going against our Asian community. Um, and then just seeing the atrocities in other countries, we're constantly exposed to that. And if you're not if you're not careful with how much consumption you're taking in, it can really impact how you feel about yourself and how you feel about the world, and it makes you feel very unsafe.
Yeah.
So that constant, again, 24/7 news outlet, social media outlet, it's adding even more pressure to
Right.
our young adults on top of already like the financial burdens or the family stress or the personal stress that you're going through. So
Right.
our youth they're experiencing a lot more than we give them credit to, identify.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's a great topic. I mean, I know a lot of my friends are starting to have kids, you know, and I know that they talk about this all the time because it's like, what's it going to look like in 10 years? I mean, what's going to be the new form? I'm really happy you talked about bullying, by the way, because I think that's one of the most unexpected challenges that a lot of the kids face. Actually, ironically, over the weekend, have you seen the movie Wonder? I don't know if you've seen it.
Haven't seen it, no.
Okay, you'll have to watch it. So I was watching that movie over the weekend. It was so good. It was about a child that had a facial deformity. And
Okay. Okay.
it's with Julia Roberts and Owen Wilson. So good. And it actually hits the nail on the head about bullying. And this is more so like it was in class bullying, which is what you think of when you think of bullying, but like certainly like online, you know, and even like now with kids having their phones, you know, like my niece and nephew have phones, and I certainly didn't have phones at their age, you know, Snapchatting and all of that. But kind of going back to the movie, you see how kids act in a certain way in front of the parents and the adults, and perhaps they're bullying somebody, and that's what the movie is about. And it's very interesting because it talks about how the parents really corral against, you know, their kid to try to protect them from this. But this is interesting because what you're saying is loud and clear is that this is an ongoing 24/7 thing, the bullying, the consumption, which actually I agree with that, especially when it's, you know, a political year and it's everywhere. I mean, and it's even on Facebook. I mean, I know I'm on Facebook now, but I know that people get their news on Facebook. And sometimes that creates a level of fear and concern and stress. I have been stressed personally by reading some of the stuff that's going on. So it's just interesting because I think if you think about what life was before, at what point, you know, we didn't have phones that weren't smartphones, right? There was no phones that you could just check the news. Oh, I'm going to check Twitter. I'm going to check TikTok, see what my friend sent me or whatever. Or even like these online celebrities, people that are becoming YouTube stars or whatever you want to call it. Same thing. I mean, I think it is just so interesting because it talks about the issues that we're seeing now and the issues that, quite frankly, I think you're seeing more and more as the times progress. So this is wonderful. One other question that came in, just so that you can address this, I think that you might have already answered, but we'll talk about it again. Where can my child go for help if our healthcare provider doesn't cover therapy or counseling? That's a good question. Not everyone has insurance or has insurance that covers it. So where can they go?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And every township is different, but one of the first things that I always encourage families to look into your immediate township. So if you live in a certain city, contact their, like, for lack of better terms, like their 411, you know, I'm trying to get general information because they will have a list of community agencies and organizations or private practices that will provide services for either free or a sliding scale based on your income. You know, so based on your income, they'll determine what's appropriate and what's affordable for you to get those services. Another thing that I always encourage families to be mindful of is the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. To have that in your phone, have that in your child's phone, program that in there because it's such an important resource. It's the number is 800-273-8255. That is the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. It is free. It's 24/7. And they're trained professionals that answer those phones and will take the opportunity to talk to that individual. And if they're in a crisis or they're feeling really sad, really low, on top of that, they can also provide resources in the community and let you know which agencies can accommodate those needs. Obviously, if it's an emergency, certainly call 911 and get that individual the help that they need, whether that's hospitalization or whatnot. And, you know, they'll work with you. Every hospital will work with you financially to figure out how to best afford the treatment, because at the end of the day, we want to make sure that the individual is safe. So those are some things to look into.
Well, and I didn't know that. You know, when we talk about the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline that's at the bottom of the screen, I think me as a person that's not in your field thinks, oh, that's for individuals facing suicidal thoughts or having. But it kind of sounds like it could also be a one-stop shop and for looking for resources. So thank you for highlighting that. I don't think I knew that. I know it now, and it's super important because again, we're also talking to all the viewers that we're not assuming we know your financial status, but we're assuming that you're human like us, and you have felt, challenges in your life. And so, yes, if you're looking for resources, you heard it here. Vincent Castio knows this stuff. So National Suicide Prevention Hotline is down in the below, and call them for resources. I mean, that is a great way to kind of get this information out to people watching today. So thank you so much for explaining that. And last but not least, Vinny, where can everyone find you if they need to contact you? What is the best way to contact you?
You can go ahead and email me below. Yeah, it just popped up. So if you have any questions or concerns, go ahead and reach out to me, and I would be more than happy to refer some community resources your way, or answer any general questions that you may have.
Please take advantage of this, you guys, because I know Vinny personally, but he really does mean what he said. He stands by his word. You have a lot of integrity. I don't just say that as a friend, but you are a wonderful and intelligent human being. So resource to the community. So thank you for speaking on that. I want to thank you for your time, Vinny. It's been a wonderful talking to you today and learning more about what you do, and really just, again, using our platform to really get this information out there. Mental health is not an easy topic, but we covered it today. And we also covered how to pick colleges and the unexpected challenges that students face. So feel free to share this video with anyone that may be interested. And as always, thank you to our viewers who are supporting and watching us all the time on Pink Mic Legal Confessions, where we cover topics that you guys care about, and really helps us know that the audience they're curious about this stuff. So if you ever have any topics that you want covered, feel free to reach out to me personally. And as you know what I do, but I invite you to hear next week. And anytime you guys have questions about who the guest was, or what we're doing, or what we do, or what I do as an attorney, you have my number below where you can text, call anytime. And I invite you here next week to cover another topic, but I'm not going to tell you which one it is, so I'll keep you tuned on that. And again, thank you so much for your time, Vinny. Thank you to the viewers. I'll catch you next week on Pink Mic Legal Confessions. I hope everyone has a wonderful and safe day and enjoy it. Thank you, Vinny.
Thank you.